Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra Unit 8, Review B. Remember to show all your work. Okay, it says to graph the following quadratic equation and identify the specified parts of the parabola. So we have y equals 2x squared minus 8x plus 6. The first thing that I noticed about this is that it's in standard form. And when it's in standard form, the first thing I need to find is the vertex, and I'm going to use the formula x equals the opposite of b over 2a. Okay, so b is right there. The opposite of that, opposite of negative 8 would be positive 8 over 2 times 2, because this is our a. Remember, it goes a, b, c. So on the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4, and then 8 divided by 4 is 2, which tells me that we go 2 goes in the middle, and then I go 2 numbers below and 2 numbers above. Now, to figure out those points, you're going to be plugging those in to the x value, okay? So you would be writing in your calculators 2 times x squared minus 8 times x plus 6, okay? So why don't we pause the video right now and go ahead and fill out those 5 missing points. Good luck. Okay, those should have been the points that you got, and remember that this 2, -2 point, that is our vertex. Okay, we can even write that down on the left-hand side because we already know that. Okay, let's go ahead and graph. So we start with our vertex at 2, -2, and then we have the point 1, 0, 0, 6, and 3, 0, and 4, 6. Remember that the vertex, there's a line that cuts through the vertex called the axis of symmetry, and that line is at x equals positive 2. And then the next thing we need to do is draw the parabola. We're actually graphing it now, and do your best job. You want that to be round at the bottom. Okay. All right. Next thing, where is the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, and that would be at the point 0, 6. Okay, next we need to find the x-intercepts, and the x-intercepts is where it crosses the x-axis, and when it says intercepts, it's talking about the points, so we have the point 1, 0 and 3, 0. And the solutions are just, hey, it's the intercepts, but it's only the x value. So we would say that x equals 1, comma 3. And there we go. All right, let's move on down. It says identify the specified parts of the parabola formed by the quadratic equation. Okay, so the first thing we're going to find is the vertex. And when it's in vertex form like this, we take the opposite of that number, and the -7 stays the same. So the opposite of 4 would be -4, -7. Okay, does it open up or down? Well, to find out if it opens up or down, would that be a positive or a negative quadratic term if we distributed? Well, it'd end up being negative. So if it's negative, that means it opens down. Okay, and the y-intercept is always where x is 0. Okay, so in our equation, we have to plug in 0 for x and solve. Why don't you guys go ahead and do that? Did you get it? It's okay if it's a weird number. By weird, I mean it was super big. I got -55. Okay. Solve the quadratic equations using an appropriate method. We've learned about factoring, inverse operations, completing the square, and the quadratic formula. And remember, you can use the quadratic formula every single time once you set your equation equal to 0. All right, so let's look at our quadratic terms. I want them to be positive, which means I'm going to move the smaller one, which is the 5w squared. And I have to move the 4 as well. Everything on the right cancels, and we're left with w squared minus 2w plus 1 equals 0. Now the first thing I always want to think about is factoring, okay? Can I factor first? There's no GCF, so I would want to multiply those two numbers 1. Well, 1 times 1 is 1. Is there a set of numbers that multiply to get to 1 and add to get to -2? And there are. It's -1 and -1. Since my leading coefficient is 1, I can do that shortcut that we learned about where I can break it straight up into our binomial, which is w minus 1 and w minus 1. Okay, we would set both of those equal to 0. It's the same thing, and when we do that, we just get that w equals 1. All right, number 4. We talked that any time that we see parentheses, we want to solve by STADMAP, the reverse order of operations or inverse operations, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to subtract the 5. We get rid of addition or subtraction first, and we have 3 parentheses x plus 4 squared equals 108. All right, the next thing to do would be cancel multiplication, and we cancel multiplication with division. 108 divided by 3 gives us 36. Okay, next thing we want to get rid of our square, and to get rid of the square, we take the square root of both sides. And remember that your calculator only gives you half of the answer, okay? It can be a plus or a minus 6. And then the last thing is to subtract the 4. And since we have 2 answers right there, we have to do this twice. We have to do the -6 minus 4 and the +6 minus 4. And then we get our 2 answers of x equals -10 and +2. Okay, number 5. Remember, the first thing we want to do is set the equation equal to 0. So I'm going to move the 9 to the other side, and we get x squared minus 14x minus 48 equal to 0. And remember, we said we always want to see if we can factor first. So numbers that multiply to get to -48 and add to get to -14. You might be like, well, 6 and 8, because that's on the list. Okay, so if you go 6 and -8, it works here, but 6 and -8 don't work here. And you'd be like, well, if it was -6, -8, then it works here, but then it doesn't work there. So guys, bad news, that's not an option, okay? We can do completing the square, but some of you guys didn't learn that. So what I'm going to do is the quadratic formula. So I need to know that a is 1, b is -14, and c is -48. So remember that x equals the opposite of b. Well, b is already negative. So the opposite of that would be a +14, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is -14, minus 4 times a times c. So 1 and negative 48. All divided by 2 times a, and 2 times a is 1. So the first thing that we worry about is the discriminant, and that's the part that's underneath the square root. I did the denominator real fast because it's 2 times 1. I can do that in my head. Okay, so doing the discriminant, once again, it's just underneath, it's negative 14 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 48. And you get 388. So that's still underneath the square root, 388. I need to figure out what the square root of 388 is. So square root of 388. 19.7. Okay. Remember, we have to round it to 2 decimals. Oh. And when we round it to 2 decimals, we'd round that 9 to a 10. So that's why the 6 changes to a 7. Okay. And just like before, we have 2 answers. We've got the 14 minus 19.7 divided by 2, and the 14 plus 19.7 divided by 2. Just make sure you do that correct in your calculator, and you want to do the numerator first before you get to the denominator. Okay, did you get your answers? You should have gotten negative 2.85 and 16.85. All right. Number 6. Why don't you guys pause the video and see if you can get everything set equal to 0. Okay, you should have gotten 10p squared plus 48. Now there's no linear term. Remember, the linear term was the p, but it canceled out. So that means I can solve this by inverses, SADMAP. So cancel the addition first, and we get 10p squared equals negative 48. The next step would be to divide by 10, and we get p squared equals negative 4.8. And finally, to get rid of the square, I'm going to take this square root. Ooh, can I take the square root of a negative number? What do you think? I don't think so. So our answer ends up being no real solution. Okay, let's go ahead and flip it over. All right, word problem. So, Justin's new cat, Franklin, ran away from home and he got stuck in a tree. Oh no! A fireman tried to rescue the cat, but unfortunately, as soon as the fireman picked Frank up, he dropped the cat and it fell to the ground. Luckily, cats always land on the feet. Now, the vertical motion of the cat is represented by the equation h equals negative 16t squared plus 40, where t is the time in seconds, and h is the cat's height from the ground in feet. Okay? And the next thing that we really need to know is that equation. All right, so how far above the ground is Franklin after 0.5 seconds? Well, right away I know they tell us the seconds and that it's saying how far above the ground. That's our height. So we're looking for the height and our time is 0.5. Okay? So all we're going to do is plug into the equation negative 16p squared plus 40, and we're plugging in 0.5. Okay? So when you plug that into your calculators, what do you get? Remember to label your answer, and you should have gotten 36 feet. Okay. How long does it take for Franklin to land on the ground? Well, how long, that's where they're talking about the time and land on the ground. So they didn't give us any numbers, but technically they did. Okay. They don't tell us the time, but when they land on the ground, the cat, what's the height of the ground? 0. Okay, so we have 0 equaling negative 16t squared plus 40. Okay, and we can do reverse order of operations, inverse operations to solve. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to subtract 40 to both sides. And we have negative 40 equals negative 16t squared. The next step would be is to divide both sides by negative 16. And we get 2.5, right? Equaling t squared. And the last step to do would be to take the square root. And remember, when you get the square root, you get two numbers. We get a positive 1.5 and a negative 1.5. And can we have negative time? No. So our final answer is the time would be 1.58 seconds. All right. And C, what was the cat's initial height before it fell? Well, once again, they didn't give us any numbers, but they really did. Now the initial height, that's what we're looking for. But what was the time before he fell? Well, has any time passed yet? No. Since no time has passed, the time is 0. So when we're plugging into that equation, we're plugging in 0 for the time. Don't take out your calculators, you can do this, okay? 0 times 0, that's the 0 squared, is 0. And negative 16 times 0 is 0. That cancels out, so we're left with that h equals 40, and that's 40 feet. Is there anything else? Oh, all the answers! Oh, I hope we got them right. I'm pretty sure we did. Now, if you have any questions on this, please come see Ms. Carranza or myself, because after this is your Unit 8 test. Okay? We're here to help, so come and find us. This is Mr. Grice signing off for Algebra Unit 8 Review B. Thanks for watching.